if you're learning a language with a trainer or a teacher, then the breakthrough comes when you realize that you need to just relax and not try hard to remember the grammar. You have to just copy and imitate what people are saying. And that's how you learn to use it properly. Language is not a science. It's not correct. It's not final. The people who have the most difficulty learning a language are those who are perhaps very, very top-level financial directors or people who are accountants. I'm not saying they can't learn it, but they find it more difficult for the simple reason that they want it to add up at the bottom and they want to say, it's like this. But language is not, I'm sorry. It's not. It doesn't work like that. There are so many exceptions to all the rules. So why learn the rules? And how do children learn? How do Russian children learn to speak Russian? They open a book when they are 2 months old and they see mama or babushka or something. No, they just hear it and they remember it. It's about the way you speak, it's about the words you use, it's about we call it articulate. An articulate person is somebody who uses a huge number of words, but somebody who's not very articulate has a very limited vocabulary. So they only use certain words. A lot of them may be swear words, or they may be, and also they don't speak very clearly because they're not used to people needing to understand what they say very much. If you're a lawyer in your own country, you want to speak English which is at the level of a lawyer, not the English which is the level of the man who stamps your tickets in the bus, you know. It's like this morning in the demo lesson, Dennis was mentioning to be tired of doing something or to be fed up with doing something. Well, you don't go to your boss and say to him, oh, I'm really fed up with doing this. But you would perhaps say, I'm a little bit tired of doing this. And there are nuances, that's a French word, sorry. There are nuances in the language. There's a lot of cultural differences, for example. In many countries, it's very acceptable in a business meeting to say to somebody, oh, no, I don't like that idea. In English, that's considered a little bit rude to say, no, I don't like that idea. You say instead of that, I'm wondering if there's another way to look at this. You know, you've got something a little more diplomatic or a little more charming or a little more less aggressive. And that's the kind of thing we teach. It's cross-cultural training, which is why we always try our very best to ensure that our teachers are mother tongue, well-educated teachers, so they can pass on that kind of information, not just the language, but the way of using it. If somebody comes to my office and says, I would like to teach English in Berlitz Oxford. So the first thing I have to check with them is if they are going to engage with me, if they want to talk to me, if they speak well, if their own language is good quality language. That's the first thing. And then I find out if they have any qualifications at university, because they must have a good education to be able to teach a language. Because if you've been to university, usually your own language is good, so you can speak it quite well at a high level. So then we find out if they have had a training as a teacher of English as a foreign language, because that's quite special. It's not the same as teaching English at school. Sometimes we get school teachers, but we ask people to have a qualification in teaching English as a foreign language. And you get a certificate when you finish the course with a accredited organization. And then we train them in the Berlitz method. So after all that, you've selected somebody who's good enough. It's a very important thing. If you have the same teacher, you hear the same sounds, you have the same life experience. Remember that Berlitz teaching is about real life situations. It's not just about the academic process of putting a language together. And so you have several different teachers on a learning program, because that way you get to know different people, different accents, different attitudes, different thoughts, different experiences. You get people who've done different jobs, of different ages. And so your experience is much more like a real world experience. People love it. People love it. I much prefer to change teachers. When I get feedback, because as a manager, I often get feedback, and I ask them for their feedback about the language course that they've had, and the first thing they say is, we like changing teachers, it's very good. In the UK, we specialise in very good quality one-to-one training. And the advantage of being in the UK is when you finish your lesson at 5 o'clock, you can go out in the street, you can go down to the pub or in the shop or in the restaurant, and everybody's speaking English. If I want to learn Russian, I can go to classes in England. In Oxford, there are places to learn Russian. But I would go once a week for 1.5 hours after work, and I would learn a few words, and I would go home and I would practice them, and 1 week later I would go back to the class and repeat the same words and 1 or 2 more. But if I really want to learn Russian, I would come to Moscow or St. Petersburg, and I would get a native speaker of the language, and I would say, now, teach me to use the language in the street, please. To say, thank you very much to people, where's the ladies, please, and this kind of thing. And I would want to do that. And that's the best way to learn.